My name's Martin Hudson, and I'm going to talk to you today about the folklore of the North York Moors. And I particularly like to thank Nick Stone of Invisible Works for this specific project and support for it. The North York Moors of North East Yorkshire are well known for their witch folklore and for folklore around hybrid human and animal beings, including the witch hares of Danby Dale, Westerdale, and Farndale, mermen and women of the coast at places such as Skinning Grove, and for fairy legends and the stories of the Hobbs, the little people of the moors. As an intensive Mesolithic and Neolithic landscape, and moving into the Bronze Age, there are thousands of burial houses on the moors, often in the escarpments and watersheds. Among the Roman roads and villas, prehistoric rock art abounds, as do the burial place of Quakers and Anglo-Saxon settlers. The Viking burial ground at Lythe was full of hogback graves, including that of what is known locally as the gingerbread man, a man being eaten by dogs. It's probably a representation of the Norse god Tyr, a god of the hanged, of dead places, of war, being torn apart by the wolf Fenrir. Tyr is otherwise known as the leavings of the wolf. This is perhaps the first emergent visualization of the foremost piece of folklore I'd like to talk about today, the black dogs of the moorland, and the relationship of the black dog to death, witches, and burial grounds. Mark Alexander, in his popular book on The Exorcist, Reverend Donald Amand recounts a story of Amand visiting Kettleness, just north of Lythe Church near Sandsend, and burial grounds in the 1950s. Amand had received a letter from a local schoolmaster who, with some acquaintances, had been terrified as a black dog came out of the air from the sea at Kettleness. Amand himself accompanied the master and himself apparently encountered the black dog, which he exorcised with holy water. The master was hospitalised with mental illness afterwards as a consequence of these events. Simon Isherwood has noted that Amand had previously been to Kettleness and heard stories from a fisherman of the black dog. He states that Amand had also noted that perhaps Bram Stoker had based the black dog incarnation of Dracula on the Kettleness stories, and thought that Bram Stoker may have visited there. Whatever the unlikely provenance of this recent tale, the black dog of the moors has been ubiquitous in local folklore, often in the guise of the bar guest or the byre ghost, a black dog who haunts burial grounds and warns of impending death. Although in local folklore of witches, of which there are many in the northernmost dales like Commondale and Westerdale, were most likely to take the form of hares to bewitch cattle or to avoid pursuit, they often took the form of black dogs. Peter N. Walker notes that as late as the 1930s, a local Yorkshire farm labourer had asked for a damaged sixpence to shoot a witch who had taken the form of a dog and was bothering sheep. Only silver could kill the witch. Similarly, Marian Atkinson, in her book on North York Moors folklore, recounts the landscape legends of Hart's Leap on Glaisdale Rig. Here the dogs are called the Garbrel Ratchet, literally dialect for corpse hounds, and hearing them presaged one's own death. Geographically, this is only a few miles distant from the location of the hybrid monster, the Guy Trash at Goathland and Julian Park, although the Guy Trash is more goat than dog. Further, Nicholas Rear, a pseudonym also for Peter N. Walker, notes the stories of the Barguest at Egton Church of St Hilda, long associated with the local mass house and the executed Catholic martyr Nicholas Postgate. The Barguest here haunts the land around the church, foretelling death to the people of the Dale. Perhaps the most important work on the folklore of the Northern Moors is 40 Years in a Moorland Parish by Canon Atkinson, first published in 1891. Not only does this testify to the recent living memory of the witch population of the Moor and Dales, it also points to the very thin Christian veneer in what were once Danish Norse farmsteads, which still bear the name of their Viking ancestors and gods of the old great heathen army. As an old woman said to Atkinson of the witches and the warlocks, they were a vast more powerful conjurers than yon church priests. Atkinson's work is full of the folklore of the black dogs, but these are black dogs which are both the form that witches take against other humans, and also that taunt and bite witches, perhaps because they are incarnate witches from another dale, as in the case of the Westerdale witch, Old Nanny. Westerdale hunters were told not to let slip a black dog of theirs when this witch was in hare form, like the Old Nanny of Danbydale, but a black dog came out of nowhere and took a bite from her haunch. What Atkinson calls the quasi-forms of the witch and the black dog may be related again to wolves, as only a mile off from here, near the garth of Old Nanny, we have Wolf Pit Slack, where the wolves of the moor were cornered and killed for bounty. The Fenrir Norse mythology may be here very clearly expressed in the memories of wolves on the high moors above Glaisdale and Danby, and the black dog motif may be a coded version of wolf stories. Atkinson also recounts a story of the black dog in Farndale, over the moor from his parsonage to the southwest. A witch here in the form of a female black dog was taken and was killing calves. It was shot, and for the purposes of detection, the hunters went to the house of the witch the next day, only to find she had shot wounds in her hinder part. Atkinson himself wrote a specific piece on the Barguest as the true haunt of the churchyard, which gives a warning of death or calamity. He published this in Volume 9 of Notes and Queries. Perhaps the most ubiquitous lore of the moorland of northeast Yorkshire and the coast is the folklore around the graves and the dead. The dead arise as physical, sentient beings here, the very opposite of insubstantial. Like the black dog and the hare, they are material entities, not wispy spirits. This harks back again to stories of the grave, that much of the lore of burial centres around specific pathways of the dead across the moor were about sacrifice and return. In order to keep the dead in their graves, charcoal and burning cinders were thrown into the grave, as in the Lyke-Wake dirge, but also teeth were thrown into the fire as proxy sacrifices. This was to ensure that the dead no longer afflicted the living, but it's also an archaic survival of the Norse burning of bodies. Little wonder that the myths of Fenrir the wolf found such resonance in the landscape of the moors, or that the myth was intimately related to rebellion against one's ancestors. Black dog sightings continue today on the moorlands, and they are staple stories of those caught out on lonely moorland roads in the heart of winter.